Smaller and smaller.
All right. I want to welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to our program today. My name is Mery. I am President and CEO of Plant-Based Nutrition Movement, also called PBNM. We are a 501c3, and our mission is to educate and promote and support plant-based eating for a healthier world. Today we will be interviewing our guest, Leanne Campbell, who is founder of Global Roots, an agency in the Dominican Republic. And I will be working with my colleague and fellow board member, Shrallow. We'll be interviewing Leanne together. A couple of housekeeping issues. I believe everybody came into the meeting muted and with their camera off. Please, you can turn your camera on if you like, but please do not unmute yourself. We want to keep the distractions to a minimum during the interview. There will be time, at least after, and I think Leanne is okay with answering questions during the interview as well. So for that, you would just raise your hand and we can call on you. We're not going to use the typed chat function this time.
Can you explain how to raise your hand, Meryl?
Sure. So if you go to the participants icon on the bottom of the screen and you hover over your name, I believe, there is an option to raise your hand. That's how it works in some cases. Otherwise, there might be just a little icon on the bottom that says raise hand.
Sounds good.
All right. Also wanted to let everybody know that when the interview is over, we're recording it now. And when the interview is over, we will load it on our YouTube channel and all the participants will receive an email with that link. So you can go back and review the interview and share it with others. Okay, and with that, I would like to introduce Sherry Shrallow, who will also introduce Dr. Leanne Campbell.
Thank you, Meryl. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see everybody. I want to tell you about a very special person that I was privileged and honored to meet and have been working with for the last 5 years, I would say. I met Leanne Campbell in the Dominican Republic at her Global Roots retreat back in 2015. And we've been together 2 other times since then. And let me tell you about this lady. Leanne Campbell has a PhD and is the director and founder of Global Roots. She currently lives in the glorious mountains of La Cubre, Dominican Republic, at the Global Roots Center. She has over 30 years of experience working with communities, universities, and schools in the Dominican Republic and in the United States. On the international front, she founded and directed a family literacy program and even served as a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic. More recently, she directed an international nonprofit known as the Global Leadership Institute. She has 2 degrees from Cornell University, a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Service Studies, and a Master of Science degree in Administration of Human Services Programs. To add to that, she has a PhD from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in Culture, Curriculum, and Change. And I have had the privilege of learning about all of these things from her. In addition to serving on the faculty at Mississippi State University and Nazareth College, she worked for several years as an instructional coach and a curriculum coach for the North Carolina Public Schools. And most recently, she worked for Duke University's Latin American and Caribbean Studies as a community outreach director. Now you think that would be enough, but I'm not done. In her spare time, back in 2013, she wrote this cookbook. It's called the China Study Cookbook. And there are a couple recipes in here that I can only tell you I'm addicted to, and this is one of them. She had this at her first retreat, and it's called coconut mango pudding. And it is so good that we nicknamed it vegan crack cocaine. Okay. Right, Sandy? So currently, Leanne is here in the United States due to the situation with the coronavirus. And she is working right now with the Center for Nutrition Studies. And she will tell you more about her role there during our interview. So with the greatest pleasure, I introduce to you Dr. Leanne Campbell.
Thank you, Sherry. That was very nice.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm actually, and I want to thank both of you for inviting me to come on and share the story that I would like to share. It's a very powerful story, and if we can share it with as many people as possible, I think it's a good story to share because it brings in the entire environmental dimension of our food systems, which it's pretty powerful. And even though I'm here in my parents' home in Ithaca, New York, I left a few months ago, and I was hoping and planning on being back already this month. We were supposed to have a group of students there this summer for 10 days, and we had to cancel all of it. And everything this year pretty much has been canceled because of the COVID thing. The borders are still closed. And I'm not sure exactly when they're going to be opening. They say perhaps sometimes in July, but we'll see. I would like to share with you though, as we begin this, a short video, I think, that summarizes the work that we do. It's only 6 minutes. And after I share it, then we can open it up to questions. I know Sherry and Meryl have some questions as well. But for anyone that would like to, let's see. Oh, it's telling me, Meryl, that the host has disabled attendee screen sharing. So I can't pull it up.
Sorry about that. Let me see if I can do that. I'm going to make you a co-host.
Okay. Perfect. I can get on now.
Perfect.
So maybe some of you have already seen this, but for those who haven't seen it, it's just it lays the context in what I'm going to be sharing with you now.
I first came to the Dominican Republic 30 years ago when I was working in the Peace Corps. And I was doing a lot of work in the community with community gardens. I've now returned to the Dominican Republic, and I've been here for 2 years. This is papaya. This is orange. This is a grapefruit tree. These are all plantains. All of this down here is pretty much chocolate cacao. On my 2 acres of land here, I produce over 40,000 pounds of food, and that's over a 2-year period. Compared to the man who owns all this land here, has all his cattle. 1 cow after 2 years is only 400 pounds of food on the same amount of land. The main thing that we have seen here is deforestation. There's been a massive amount of trees cut down. 30 years ago, it was totally forested. There are coffee plants throughout the entire area, mango trees, everything. The entire area was completely covered.
La mayoría de ellos cuestan una cantidad de árboles, mientras que la masa pobre cuestan un pequeño árbol para subsistir sus necesidades. Y por ello se ha destruido parte de la naturaleza de esta República Dominicana.
Almost all the rivers have lost close to 70% of their water flow. In some rivers, it's been almost 100%.
El río ahora está sin agua, está seco. Ya los árboles que habían, que daban agua, ya no están.
There's a loss of a lot of the native species, loss of lots of fruit trees. 30 years ago, there were sweet oranges everywhere, grapefruits, mangoes, but now there's very few of those trees anywhere.
La naranja se daba así, usted se comía una naranja aquí y tiraba la semilla por ahí y a los 15 días, a los 20 días ya había matica, mucha matica de naranja así, naciendo. Pero ya no hay de nada.
You go to the largest grocery store in Mocha, the oranges that are in there are imported from the United States, which is ludicrous. I mean, we're in the tropics and we don't have our own oranges. We're getting oranges brought in from the States.
Bueno, la solución es volver a construir el país, volver a sembrar árboles, sembrar fruta.
The two most essential human needs is housing and food. So at Global Roots, we provide education programs, specifically for high schools, colleges, and universities. One of our programs that we offer is the VITA Land and Housing Project. This here is going to be our Air Creek Dome Home community. We have invited a technician from Spain who came over who taught us how to build these Air Creek Dome homes. And they can withstand 250-mile-per-hour winds, they're fireproof, they're earthquake-proof. During this program, we are actually going to be building a home for a family here in the community. And then at the same time, we're going to be doing some really innovative land regeneration projects, where we're going to be reforesting a dry riverbed. We are going to be creating a community tree nursery, a seed bank, gathering all the native local seeds, and then creating the seedlings and planting them. And then we are also going to put in a water project. So this here is one of the projects that we did with our group of students. This well is 20 feet deep. It provides everyone here in the area water because none of the families where they stayed had running water in their homes. None of the families here in this whole area had running water. One of the unique things about our education programs is that we provide a hands-on opportunity where we're intentionally looking at solutions. Yes, we know the problems are there, but let's do something right here, right now. We are also going to be partnering with larger landowners and trying to take a portion of their land and create an agroforest. I think a lot of the larger landowners, the cattle ranchers, they're also seeing the changes. And they're more open than ever before to address some of these changes. We have an opportunity right now to go in and work with them. Take a portion and show what we can do with that land and the amount of food that can be created on this small portion of land compared to what they're currently getting out of their land. But not only that, bringing the land back to life.
Porque aquí no se sufría tanto, porque aquí había mucho café, cacao y cuantas cosas y todo eso se disparaban, porque es que no hemos descuidado de las cosas y eso es lo que está pasando.
So one of the things that we really try to do here is we try to immerse the students in the setting. We want them to understand and build relationships with those who are experiencing these changes, to see how drastic they are, to see it, to feel it. You know, we can read about it in textbooks, but do we truly understand how urgent this is? You know, so that's one of the things that we try to do is to show them this is real, this is happening right now, and the urgency of the situation. And once we create that is we try to do something. We create solutions, we try to address it. You know, it's using the minimal amount of resources that we can when we try to replenish the earth, you know, replenish the soils, and also teaching them the newest methods and how to do this. We create education initiatives where we can learn not only through the example of here, but how to apply that as well in their own communities. Because part of this whole process is to really embrace the idea of community and the role of community, that one person alone can't do it. So it takes a community to do it. We have no time to lose. It has to happen now.
Great video. I've seen that before, but every time I watch it, I just take away more and more. Leanne, I was very fortunate to have had an experience of living in the country and being in your home and your center. And I understand that is so different, like you said, than just reading about this in a textbook. When you see these dry riverbeds and the trees that are gone, it's shocking.
Absolutely. You know, Sherry, it's when you're so far away from it. Even here in my parents' house, it's raining. We have green grass and everything is so, my father's garden is actually just thriving, but it seems so far away and it seems so unreal. But you know, I think the climate disruption is happening, of course, in the poles a lot more drastically, and in the tropics here, we're seeing it incredibly quickly. It's incredibly fast. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about your Peace Corps experience some 30 years ago. Could you tell us a little bit about what you did in the Peace Corps and where you lived and what it was like for you socially to be there and just how people lived at that time in the Dominican Republic? How did they make a living?
Sure. So I actually lived in a small community around maybe 35 minutes from where the center is located. So I did live in the same exact province. And I think the uniqueness about my experience here is that I was there, gosh, over 30 years ago in the Peace Corps. And now I'm coming back again 30 years later. I mean, I've had another career outside of this, but the 2 years that I've been there, I'm just astounded at such a short period of time, the changes that have occurred within those 30 years. But my work in the Peace Corps 30 years ago, I worked in a healthcare program, and I lived in a small clinic in the mountains, and my job was to rehabilitate malnourished children. And in living in this small clinic, I did a lot of work in all the villages around me, and I had a little motorcycle, and so I traveled to all these different villages, and my job was to weigh children 5 years of an age and under, and then work with the families on trying to create, you know, initiatives that would sort of address some of the healthcare needs, such as poor infrastructure. So we built latrines, you know, over 50 latrines, lack of inadequate drinking water. So we built these like 20,000 gallon water tanks in schools and with the families. I raised some money when I came home and I was visiting my parents over the holidays. And I took that money back with me and just going to some different churches and built schools, like 3 different schools as well. We did tons of community gardens and a women's collective. But, and I lived in the same exact mountains. And I walked around the mountains. The more remote the village, I was there. You know, I would stay with the families in the village, and I tried to find the areas that had the most need as well. And so I feel like I really got to know intimately sort of the social and cultural setting of where I was. And socially, you know, I think in the Dominican Republic, at least where I was, there was an incredible sense of community because, you know, the government wasn't doing anything to address, for the most part, the needs in this area. So they had to rely upon themselves. And you know, it was pretty amazing. In every community, there was a group called Ama de Casa, Love of Home. It was a women's group, and they essentially, you know, collected, every person went to the group and they paid a fee each week. But if there was a major emergency in someone's home, the group always came forward and helped each other. So the whole sense of community is, I think, very strong, and something that's incredibly important as we go forward and trying to think of what we can do in our own communities, and trying to foster that whole community building process that's in that collective spirit of trying to help each other, right? And like, as my neighbor says next door, you know, whatever she has is everybody else's, right? And there's that kind of spirit that, you know, you don't guard things, you give them out, right? And that, I think that's very important. That's very important in the situation that we're in the Dominican Republic. we need to first and foremost learn to take care of each other, right? And so how did they make a living? They basically, the families here in this area lived on small farms. They had small farms. Most were self-reliant. They had what they called a canuco. They grew everything, pretty much what they needed. But there were still some things that they needed to make an income on. And so they grew some things on their farm that they would then, as a cash crop, and they would sell. You know, some people were school teachers and some worked in the main town, had little stores. And so it was a little bit of everything. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting, Leanne. Really great. I wanted to ask about the one gentleman in the beginning during the video. He says that the land changed as a result of the big ranchers coming in and doing practices the way they do them. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How did that happen?
Okay, so really, I mean, I think the whole thing, it's you look at the big ranchers, I mean, it's actually a much larger than just the big ranchers. You know, there's the demand for the food that they're producing as well. And if that demand wasn't there, would they really be doing what they're doing? So what happened actually during this time too was that a lot of families, coffee became the #1 cash crop, and this was maybe 5 years after I left. And everyone started planting coffee trees. There was a demand for coffee around the world. It was their #1 export crop. And so they were clearing their land and they were planting coffee. Well, it was, you know, the whole process of a monoculture crop, not as much diversity as there was before. The coffee got what was called a coffee rust. And it came in, it was a blight, and it just knocked off maybe 90% of the coffee in the area. So the families actually ended up, they had to leave. They went, and it was a massive rural to urban migration. And I would say maybe 80% of the people in the rural areas in the mountains left and went into the urban areas. And there's an expression in the Dominican Republic: if you're poor, you sell your land for nothing. And if you're wealthy, you hold on to your land and you get the highest price possible. Well, most of the people at this stage were quite poor. They sold their land for practically nothing. And there was one wealthy landowner that was buying up everyone's land. Oftentimes this wealthy landowner, Dominican, lived in the Dominican Republic, had US residency as well, had a nice home in the US. They bought up the land, and what they in turn did with the land was the most economical farming practice is basically livestock. You don't really need to have a lot of oversight. One person can go around fixing the fences, and you just put the cattle in the field, and that's pretty much it. And so and there's a demand too for a lot more beef. So this is what happened. They ended up clearing massive tracts of land throughout the entire northern coast, basically the mountains. And you know, I like to hike, and I hike all over the place. I try to walk like 20 miles a week, and every time I just walk through the mountains in different places, and the amount of deforestation just in this area is just astronomical. And so it's been pretty much, you know, that's where it's at right now. So.
Could I ask just one follow-up question to that? So.
Sure.
You have on an acre of land, let's say, how many cows would a cattle rancher have these days? Okay,
so right now, generally, if the land is really good, quality land, 2 acres of land for one cow, right? If the land is of poor quality, it maybe 2, 3, 4 acres. It depends on the quality of the land, but generally healthy land, it's around 2 acres per cow. The land actually has become completely depleted since in the last 5 years. The rivers have, like I said in that little video, the rivers are drying up. The land is also becoming, you know, sort of sandier. and harder, and the grasses are growing less and less, and now it's raining less and less as well. So, yeah.
Quite an impact.
Yeah, and that's quite different from, you know, the 2 acres with the 40,000 pounds of produce that I grow in my center. So,
That's an incredible difference.
yeah.
So our next question has to do with your students that come down to have this experience. Can you tell a little bit more? Can you tell us a little bit more about how you engage them and how they gain understanding?
Okay, so I think one of the things that's really important in all of this is to create a dialogue, right? And to build the relationships. Because oftentimes, you know, I want my students to sort of, when they go down, at the same time, I want them to develop I want them to care about what they're doing, right? But caring can be problematic if you can't identify with those who are in that situation. Because if you can't identify with me, then how can you truly care for me? Your caring is an act of imposition. So what I try to do in this situation is I try to create opportunities for them to really, truly understand those in the village. And one of our activities that we do, we call it a community mapping process. Let's map our community, where it's a process where you let the data speak for itself. And we've done this in many different ways. So the students will go down, we break them into different groups in different parts of the village. They do a basic like community diagnostic over here. And one of the first times we did it was looking at the water situation, because a lot of the people, none of the people actually in this village had running water in their homes. They were still walking like, you know, a mile to get water. So each of the students went into smaller groups, and they went and they did their diagnostic. They asked, how many gallons of water do you get each time you go to the river? Where do you go to the river? And then they actually went with the family to the river to help carry the water back. And then, you know, they came back then to the center with all their data. They had maybe 10 questions or so. And they came back and they were just exhausted. They're like, wow, you know, we just went down with them and I only carried 2 gallons of water, but you know, the lady in the house I went with, she was like 8 months pregnant, and we had to go down this steep hill. She had 5 gallons of water on her head. She was carrying 4 gallons in her hand. And I thought I was going to die with this 2 gallons of water. And then, you know, another student, like, they go down and carry 40 gallons a day. And my response is, well, 40 gallons a day. And they're like, that's tons of water. But you know, the average US citizen uses almost 90 gallons of water a day. So this is 40 gallons of water a day for a family of 4, right? And so it's like, it's very different, but they do this, and then we just let the data speak for itself. We don't really say much, because right next door, the cattle at the same time, one cow needs almost 25 to 40 gallons of water a day, right? And so then our students are just, you know, we all the numbers come through, and then we just let them reflect on it. We let them talk about it. In this specific case, we had one young lady that left the group, actually 2 of them. They went back to their schools, and one raised $25,000 with a teacher that we were able to then use to put in the water system in La Cumbre. Another young lady raised like $3,000. But over the years, you know, we do these diagnostics, and that's, I think, the best way to try to raise a consciousness about what's going on is just trying to let the numbers speak. And so right now with our upcoming projects, we're trying to use let's map our community process, where we look at the environmental changes, what 30 years ago and today. And so they're going in, and they're creating a map. This map is what it looked like 30 years ago, and this is what it looks like today. And a lot of the young people, even in the Dominican Republic, they don't know this either. And so they're together working with the students, right, to create this, and then to put up this larger picture of what's going on. Yeah. So yeah, we use this process, the community mapping process, which is pretty exciting process.
Really. I think that pretty much answers our next question. Can you tell us, you told us about the young lady who was so moved that she came back home. A couple of them came back home and raised large sums of money. Can you tell us about any other students who had sort of an amazing response to the experience?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of the students, actually, almost all of them, one of the things that their teachers tell me, so I have several teachers who go back for years and several years, and they always bring students back from their high school. And they always tell me that this is like the #1 thing that the students use when they write up on their applications, you know, their college applications. These are high school students, what they want to do. And so it's an experience that has pretty much a profound impact on them. And I mean, I think for the most part, they're so immersed in the culture because they stay with the families in their homes. And I think it has at least what I'm told by the teachers, it sort of helps define what they even want to do when they go to college, right? And what they want to study. And I then later have students, after they get into college, contact me who want to come down and be interns, right? And work in the program, and they want to study. You know, I had one young lady this past summer who was amazing. She was an environmental studies major, and she came down and she was all ready to help as much as she could in this area. So I think it's you know, they really do get involved in. And I mean, they really take a lot of this to heart. And I think it's that immersion type experience that makes that happen.
So you give new meaning to the word planting the seeds, because I think that's what you're doing with all of these young people, is you're starting a new generation all over the United States and in the Dominican Republic, who hopefully will take all of this back and do good things in their lives to reverse what we are all faced with right now. True?
Absolutely. I think they're definitely. I think this is one of the best ways that I have found. And they really take it seriously when they leave. And they all want to come back. So yeah.
So we're going to switch gears here, and I'm going to ask you a little bit about your own garden, which I got to experience, the 2 acres of things that you grow. Can you tell us a little bit more about the land that you grow on, the topography, which I was a little surprised when I saw it. I couldn't believe that things were growing there. And, you know, just how much food, that 40,000 pounds of food over a 2-year period on just 2 acres. How does that happen?
Yeah, a lot of people actually find that puzzling, and I don't think they quite believe me when I say that we can get around 40,000 pounds of food off the land, off these 2 acres. We have it's a tiered garden process, right? So when I bought the land, I inherited a very small cacao grow, which has the cacao trees. And in that area, there's the larger trees. We have the avocado trees and what's called zapote trees. In fact, right now there's 82 different food items growing on the land. And I'm pretty much almost 100% self-sustainable off of this land. And so you have the overarching, the larger trees, and then we have all the root crops. And in the Dominican Republic, there's tons of root crops, the cassave, yuca, batata, potatoes, the yautia. And there's another big, interesting root crop that is called ñame, and it can grow as big as like from your hip down to your foot. It's a really big, crazy big root crop. Can you imagine digging something like that up to eat it? But it can stay in the ground for up to like 4 years. And so but so there's tons, everything in the ground. There are lots of, and our land is pretty much covered with root crops. And then you have the overarching trees. We have lots of avocados now, oranges, mandarins, and the sour oranges. And then we have all the in-between. So the in-between are, you know, the smaller starfruit trees, all the garden produce, you know, tomatoes, kale, tons of kale, which is sort of odd because we're in the tropics and that's sort of a cool weather crop. but we get like 3 different kinds of kale we're growing, and we're waiting for it to seed, but it hasn't. 3 years later, it's like all up to my shoulder, and it's still producing little bits of kale. And now I've figured out how to make it multiply without seeds, but and gosh, I don't know, you sort of name it. We have all the herbs. I sugar cane as well. Anything you can think of, jackfruit, blackberries even also. So we have lots of stuff growing on the land. So
as I recall, all of the things that we ate at your center came from your land.
Yeah,
it was delicious.
Right. And so we did purchase, Sherry, I think since you since you were last there, was a small part of an additional land. And it was part of the field beside us, the cattle field. And that land was in horrible condition. So it's taken us maybe 2 years to regenerate the soil within that land and trying to bring it back to life. As the Dominicans say, that land has been overcooked and overheated and nothing will grow in it. So we have had to work really hard at trying to bring this land back to life. And it's been a bit of a process, but we've done it. So it's now, lots of banana trees too. And rouleaus, you remember the bananas, and lots of the plantains and all of those trees. So, yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about when you say you had to work hard to bring the land back to life? What did you do exactly to bring it back to life like that?
Yeah, so basically the land that we recently bought, when you pick up soil and there's like 2 different kinds of soil, you can pick it up and if it's really loose and almost like sandy, there's no life in it whatsoever. And soil is probably one of the most vital resources that we actually have this is the only planet that has soil, right? And there's so much life in soil, and when you start taking out this life, what can we grow in it? So basically what we have done is that we've had to mulch it, and layers of mulching, and then also adding compost to it, and then more mulch to it, because the soil has essentially, as the Dominicans, the guys who work on the land say, it's been baked. It's been really parched. And so the mulching, the compost, the mulching, that's what's bringing it back to life. And I do have a bit of a problem though, because there's lots of chickens. I don't have chickens, but my neighbors do, and they're all free ranging. And so they always come over into our land, because now we're getting the most bugs of any little worms than any other house in the village practically. And they come in and they keep knocking my mulch away to get down to the bugs. So we're trying to always chase the chickens out to get the make it help. Yeah.
What about the water though? Where do you get water to keep everything growing?
Okay, so so we have like I said, the cattle next door, they have 1 cow for 400 pounds of animal flesh is approximately a daily 30 gallons of water. So on our land, with our 40,000 pounds of produce that we create after the 2-year period, we have, since we mulch everything, that retains the water, right? And in the forest, that's also retaining the water. So the mature trees, we don't need to water at all. And the only things that we really do water are the new, sort of our new growth, just, putting in new plants. And so I just put in 4 pomegranate trees. I was going to say it in Spanish, but pomegranate. And so we're mulching that, right? But then we're also putting in, we have to water that. And so, but daily, it depends on what new things we're planting, 5 gallons of water a day. And what we've created at the center is that we have a rainwater catchment system. So every time it rains, it goes into a cistern under the center, and the cistern holds around 20,000 gallons of water. And I've also just started a process where we are recycling our water. So every time I have something in the kitchen, you know, even from the shower area, it goes down and using biodegradable soaps. And so we're able to use this water then in the garden as well. So it is, Sherry, the drought right now is just astronomical. Like I said, I mean, I was just talking to my dad a little bit ago. A year ago, I called my parents almost a year ago from today and just devastated about the drought that was going on there and the heat and so dry. And so now I was just talking to the guys down there here. We just went through May. May is one of the rainiest months of the year there. It always has been. It only rained maybe 2 times in the month of May, and it didn't even last for like more than like, you know, just barely rained. And so the drought and the heat, it's getting, I mean, even though we do have our systems and stuff, I often wonder what's going to happen, you know, to those who don't have that around me. The water system we put in is now there's some competition with that water because we put the system in down below in the field where the cows are, because public waterways as of right now, or any rivers and streams are public. So anyone and everyone has access to them. They're not privately owned as of yet. But you know, this is like what's going to be the biggest thing next is water wars, right? Who has access to these waterways? But as of right now, still like within the Dominican Republic, these rivers are public areas. But the cattle, they're well dried up. And so the people in the village were upset, really mad one day because the farmer had taken the well that we had labored so hard to create and was using this to fill up all the water for his cattle. And you know, with 30 heads of cattle there, basically they're using almost more water with these 30 heads of cattle than what we have in just our little 20 houses right there in that one little corner. So where that water was going. So yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot your question, but I'm going off on this tangent with the water thing here, and it's yeah.
So I'm just curious though, in the past, when people didn't have access to the beef, were they eating more plant foods in the country? And is this a transition that they made like a lot of countries?
You know what, Sherry, the health now, and everyone says it, it's not just me and my plant-based little world, but everyone, all the people, the health conditions right now of the Dominicans are a lot worse than they ever were 30 years ago. So a lot of the meat is actually, none of the people in the village have any of this livestock that is being grown. A lot of it is exported. And so no one, I've never seen a single person there eat it, but there is a lot more, there is a lot more meat being consumed now than there ever was before. When I was there 30 years ago, it was an occasional chicken, you know, but now there's a lot more like, and occasional some salami, but that was very expensive. And oil was also expensive. Oil is no longer expensive there, especially corn oil. You know, we have all these subsidized, like here in the US, crops that we oftentimes send abroad, right? Corn oil is really cheap there. And they go through like a gallon of corn oil in like a 2-week period, Sherry, 2 weeks, a gallon of oil. And that's, you know, deep frying cheese, deep frying eggs, deep frying everything. So the health is just, it's really, really deteriorated.
Are you starting to see the same patterns of health issues in the Dominican Republic as we see in America, like diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease and all of that stuff, obesity?
Absolutely, Meryl. There's a lot more obesity. Blood pressure is up. Cholesterol is way up. And lots more diabetes, you know, and in fact, so everyone notices what I'm doing around the village where I'm at. And I guess in a way we are a model, right? And we invite and I share. So what do I do with all this food that we grow? I share it with all my neighbors. And you know, so the lady down below me, she's maybe in her early 60s. And she had really bad diabetes and she was being hospitalized for like extended periods of time when she was having a spell. And so the gardeners actually went down and they told her, you need to go talk to this Americana, you need to stop eating meat. And so that's exactly what she did. She came up and I sat and I talked with her and I gave her like boxes of food too everyone shares food, whatever people grow, they share it. And so I gave her some of the stuff that I had and I actually made her a couple different funky soups that they'd never had before, an eggplant tomato soup, which was, which seemed really weird to them, but I was making her some stuff and taking it down and she went cold turkey and her diabetes got completely better. But one thing that the Dominicans use too is the medicinal plants. They do have a lot of medicinal herbs and plants, and they're really, really good with using all of that. But absolutely at the same time is that the health has really deteriorated in the area. So
what do the cattle farmers think of you and what you're doing?
I think the one guy right beside me, we had interesting discussion one day. He owns 1,000 acres now of the land there right beside us that all used to be owned by the people there in the area. He didn't agree with what I was, he sort of like telling me I need my protein, I need my meat. But at the same time, I think that this guy actually has an interest in perhaps trying to change his farming practices, because like I had said earlier, their cows are getting skinnier, and there's less and less cattle in the field that he once had, and so that his numbers are going down a lot more. And so I think he's open more to trying an alternative way. And that's why I'm sort of excited about starting this one initiative where we're going to take over a portion of his land and try to create an agro-food forest there. And we also want to, take this where we do it with the river that's dried up and try to bring back the river, because there's, growing trees along the riverbank and down below. There's certain trees that pull the water up, right? And so we're going to try to do a regenerative river project and it producing food. The cattle rancher will keep 50% of all the produce, and then those who are planting it will keep 50% and be able to sell it. And so it's a win-win for everybody. Those who are planting it can make a little bit of income, and then the cattle rancher too. And we're bringing the land back to life and reforesting these areas. So.
Great. Meryl, how about if we skip down to number 11, because I think we've covered a lot above.
Right. Yeah, so you're in a foreign country. Dominican Republic is, a sovereign nation all by itself. Do they support your efforts, given that you're from, you're a statesider, you're an Americana? Do they support what you're doing?
Absolutely, and that's a good question. And I think, there's been a long history of the U.S. involvement in the Dominican Republic, and it hasn't always been a positive involvement there. And so I think there is some distrust, right? And I guess, so my ex-husband is Dominican. We're no longer married. And so I sort of have this little entryway because of that. And then at the same time, both of my sons, they're Dominican citizens too. And so, working there and being there, and then I think too, with all the projects that we've done with the water projects in the area, I think that they really they're supporting the center tremendously. And in terms of distrust, they see what we're doing, and we talk, and we do these, like when we do our diagnostic things too, and we talk, it's always about, it's very candid, because at the same time we talk about like the foreign markets, and you know, it's like we're all in this together. After a while, you start recognizing that it's all interconnected, right? And the food systems around the world are completely interconnected, right? And so when we start looking in more depth at some of that, there is, I think, you know, in the end, I think it takes people get to know people, and I think I think they're trusting of me, and I mean, it's been a couple of years, and you know, people are the same anywhere all over the world. There's the town gossip, there's the, you know, there's the one that gives everything, and we're all, yeah.
So I know we have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to sort of speed through the last few questions, if we could do that, so that we have some time for individual questions as well.
Oh, sure.
So I think just to bring these questions together at the end. So how can we here in the United States impact what's happening here? And can you tell us a little bit about maybe your course that you're going to be offering through the Center for Nutrition Studies that might tie into it? And like, what are the biggest contributors to climate change that Americans need to understand?
Okay, so just really quick, the course that's going to be offered at CNS, there's currently the plant-based certificate program, which you had mentioned at the very beginning, Sherry. There's a 15% discount on that. It just nutritionstudies.org. You can go on and get that information. And there's also a new course coming up, a new certificate program. It's the Sustainability Food Systems. Everything we're talking about here with some of the leading experts in the world that will be talking about our food systems, the Farm Bill, and agro-food business. That's also going to be coming up soon, hopefully by the end of the year. That's going to be on the eCornell platform, so people can sign up for that. And I'm sorry, what you said, what were the biggest contributors to?
Yes, to climate change.
I really think that the whole food industry, food systems, I mean, that's what we're experiencing there in the Dominican Republic. That is by far the biggest contributor, what we're seeing in the Dominican Republic. And when you take this course, the Food Systems and Sustainability course, you will see how deforestation has a big impact on, like, rain clouds come through right beside the center, really dark rain clouds, but it doesn't fall. You see all the deforested mountains, and then there's like this whole thing where you can actually, where trees and forest, actually the rain will fall within that area. But anyways, so the livestock, but also if you go a little bit deeper too, you need to look at our economies, and you need to look at the markets, and you need to look at who's controlling those markets, and who's not even a player in those markets. And you need to look at, you know, it's really the big corporations, the food systems, the agribusiness is giant. And we need to look at some of those economic systems as well. And you know, what kind of economic what kind of like structure do we want to live in? You know, it's basically profit over health, profit over nature. I mean, we need to look more carefully, I think, and be critical at this, and become educated too about how we are part of these systems and what we can do to get out of some of this.
So what can we do?
Okay, so I sort of like the supporting local organic farms, joining your CSA, becoming educated, becoming more aware of where your food comes from. You know, even the whole GMO thing too, becoming more educated about that and looking at the implications of that, because I mean, that's had a massive impact too in the Dominican Republic. This pesticides as well has had a big impact on getting rid of the diversity in insects and bees, which are so important. So becoming more educated, knowing where your food comes from, supporting local farms, joining CSAs. There's, you know, a lot of the farms too are, especially in North Carolina, there's a lot of organic farmers, but it's too expensive to get that organic label. But if you really talk to the farmer and see where their food comes from too, you know, supporting the local farmers. And you know, I think of course, most importantly, is to stop the need for the demand for meat and livestock as well, right? And just becoming, I think too, I think one of the things, obviously, I think your group has also joined this, is recognizing and embracing the idea, the resilient and regenerative power of a whole food plant-based diet. You know, how this is the optimal form to promote health, personal health. And when it's done in a sustainable manner too, it can also help heal some of the ecosystems around the world as well. So.
Thank you. How about if we open up for some questions in the last few minutes that we have together? Anyone have a question for Leanne?
Does anyone want to go down to visit the Dominican Republic?
I want to come back.
Okay.
Question?
Sandy, are you raising your hand? I can't tell. Sandy, can we unmute Sandy?
Yeah, hold on.
Hold on 1 second, Sandy. We're getting to you.
Sorry, little technical snafu here. Hold on.
Or can we unmute everybody?
No, we can't do that.
Okay.
Okay, Sandy, you're under Deb.
Deborah.
Yeah. Okay, I've got you unmuted. No.
No, not yet.
Okay, Sandy, can you unmute yourself?
She's unmuted now. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say hello to Leanne. It's been a while, maybe
Yeah.
3 years, maybe since we were in North Carolina.
Yeah, how are you doing, Sandy?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's very good to see you, and I applaud you for your work that you're doing. I got started, I guess, 4 years before we met in the Dominican, and your program just kept me going on this path all this time. So
that's great.
I appreciate all that you're doing, Leanne.
Thank you, Sandy.
It's good to see you again.
Same. It's nice seeing you.
Nice seeing you.
Stay healthy. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm trying.
Leanne, I have a question. If somebody does want to come down to visit your farm, what would they need to do?
So, you know, Nancy, we actually have, that's why we're building those little aircrete dome homes. And with the idea that we can host a lot of people within these homes. And we love to have visitors. And we have our scheduled programs with high school students and also with universities and stuff. But if you would like to just come and visit and stay in one of the dome homes and see the area, you're definitely welcome to. I will give you, if you go to Global Roots or, okay, so I'm with CNS now. This is another thing. I'm working with the Center for Nutrition Studies. And you can also, my contact information, I can share it. What would be the best way to do this, Sherry and Meryl?
But I can get into the chat.
Yeah, you can put your email up.
Okay, and you can email me. Yeah, but we are going to have also more structured programs for the general public as well. So
I would love to
we
see.
have another question. Someone's asking, what do you use sour oranges for?
Oh, that I love sour oranges. It's one of my favorite things to cook with actually right now, more so than lemons and limes. And a sour orange is a little bit, it's not as hard as a lemon. And it's really nice to put on salads. I just like squeezing a little bit of the sour orange on salads. And I also, Dominicans use sour oranges in everything. They put it in their beans, even Dominican rice and beans. They put it in their chapea and some of their different soups. And also they use it because when you peel mangoes and plantains, you get your hands really like, it's stained. And so they also use sour oranges to clean off the stains on their hands. So
it's a cleaner too.
Second part of that question, we have this from the same person. I think it says, do you regenerate the soil using small animal manure fertilizer?
So yeah, the guys, I know that they have actually brought some stuff down from like old pig pens. No longer are there pigs there anymore. but I know that they have brought sack loads of stuff from these pig pens. You know, maybe 2 years ago there were pigs in the pig pen, but the soil was really dark and black. So they do bring that in, but that's like almost 2 years old. Otherwise, we don't. We use a lot of the cacao and a lot of the coffee. So there is still coffee around, right? And the cacao has this, the cocoa, or I should say, that's the chocolate, the pod. And when it rots and gets really, it's wonderful. It's fantastic also to put on the soil. So, yeah.
Great.
Anybody else?
Any other questions? Oh, we got one in the chat. Leanne, what do you eat in a typical day in the Dominican Republic?
That's a good question. I pretty much, I'm the rice and bean queen. I eat lots and lots of rice and beans. Dominican beans are absolutely fantastic. They make it with like a yellow squash base with lots of garlic and peppers and onions, and then they use a squash, like a Caribbean pumpkin base that they puree with a tomato paste in with it as well, and cilantro, and 2 different kinds of cilantro, again with a little bit of sour orange. And I pretty much have that almost every single day because that's what they eat every day. I do a lot of rice and beans, but a lot of salad, and lots of fruit. And I do eat a lot of the root crops. I never have bread because, you know, we don't have any wheat or anything. I do a lot for breakfast. A lot of times I have the boiled yuca, which is cassave, which is then baked. And it's really nice with a guacamole or with a salsa. And so savory dishes for breakfast and for dinner as well. Lots of soups. Lots of, you know, different kinds of things with our kale and with using the greens in that as well, kale salads. So
you're a great cook.
We have another question in the chat, and I don't know if I should be saying who's asking these questions. That last one was from Del Sroof. Hi, Del.
Hi, Del.
The next one is from Joan Davis. You said in the past most folks were farmers. Now they live in the city, right? Are they able to support themselves? Can they have small farms even in the city?
That's an excellent question. I think a lot of the people who are now currently living in the city, a lot of them, they come back and visit, and a lot of them sort of wish they still owned their land. Land is an incredibly valuable commodity, right? And especially in tougher times. But I think the Dominican Republic is actually, with this whole COVID thing, they're going to be really hit, I think, too, because everything's been shut down there as well. The economy is not doing very well, but it never really was doing super well. But I think it's going to be a lot harder. No, they don't really, those who do have a yard, pretty much, they still grow banana trees and maybe some plantain trees, but pretty much not too much of it. And with the drought that's going on right now, I mean, pretty much the larger trees have been able to resist it up until now. But the guys were telling me last night that even the banana trees and the plantain trees are really, really being hit hard right now with this drought. And that is their #1 staple, are boiled green bananas and boiled green plantains. And that's really going to, when that happens, it's going to be really, really tough.
Wow. Okay, we have another question. This is from Nancy. When do you anticipate returning to Dominican Republic?
I'm hoping to go down actually mid-July. Yep. And we'll see. There's only one airline right now flying in. And so I don't know if that's a good thing. They say it's currently going to be open mid-July. And now this is the airline that's coming up. So we'll see. Yeah.
So I have one question of my own. So there's, it's pretty well documented and well understood that global warming or climate change is going to impact the third world countries hardest, right? And Dominican Republic, I think, still qualifies as a third world country. besides what you're doing, do you see any other groups or people or the government or anything really pushing back and working hard to recover the soil and change what's going on in that country?
Yes, actually I do, Meryl. There's been a really interesting brigade that just began about a year ago, and it's funded by the government, and basically what they're doing is they're hiring people, like in the area I live in, La Cumbre, around 8 people have been hired to plant trees, and so and the government pays them not a full salary, a little bit less, but they go into different farms and they're planting, you know, coffee, cacao, and bananas and so on, and plantains. And the farm that they go to work on, because it's custom in the Dominican Republic that you provide the full meal for the workers, right? So when they come and they start working on the farm, the family that owns the land has to feed them for the meals. And so that's happening in every single village right now in the area that I'm in, which is a really positive, nice thing to see. So there's a lot more of that going on. It probably should have happened maybe 20 years ago, and somehow there is a law that was also passed that said that if you own current land and you're not growing something on it, or you're not trying to do something to conserve it, the land can be taken away from you by the government. And so that has been now placed in the Constitution. However, that has not been enforced at all, because most of these big landowners are very, very wealthy too, and they have a lot more sway than yeah.
We have another question. We are over time.
Maybe this can be the last question.
Yeah, maybe I think this will be. Okay. So how do you keep your spirits up with the challenges facing the folks you care for and live with in the Dominican Republic? That's coming from Joan.
You know, that's a good question. I guess it's just, I'm so in awe, and so sometimes just so impressed with the natural world. I don't know how do you explain. I'm just so, like, I feel like I have to be a steward of the land in a way. It's sort of this you know, I feel like my time here, I have to give the best that I can, and the people around me, and to give the best that I can too as well. But it's that stewardship that I sit beside my sweet potato patch, which is one of my favorite places to sit, and it's like this rejuvenation in a way. It's just like everything that's going on, but you can't stop, right? You've got to keep working. And having 2 young sons, I say young, but they're not young anymore. 25 and 26 are 2 men. But thinking about my children and perhaps one day grandchildren, it's like I can't just sit by. I got to try to do something.
I want to thank you, Leanne, so much. You have always inspired me and continue to inspire me to do the best I can. And I know here in Chicago at Plant-Based Nutrition Movement, our wheels are spinning trying to think how we can start to help to feed people that need food and need good quality food. So that's part of our mission moving forward, or will be, when we can start to be out there. So again, thank you for spending this hour with us. It's just invaluable to all of us, and we welcome you back anytime if you have updates, or if you'd like a group of us to come down, maybe PBNM can have a trip and we can all come together.
Absolutely, I would love that.
Experience the life there.
Yeah, but thank you, Sherry. Thank you, and thank you, Meryl.
Please share your email.
Okay.
With Sherry or Meryl or somebody somehow.
Absolutely, definitely. Sherry, do you have my emails, Cheryl?
I do.
We can send it out. We'll add it to the email that the participants get with the link for the YouTube video.
And good luck with your CNS programs. We look forward to hearing more about it, and I would love to take that course. I might be one of the early students.
Hey, Sherry, and one other thing too, I'm trying to set up a service initiative at CNS where we're going to give out grants to groups like yourself who's trying to make access to food, easier to, and creating sustainable food systems in areas where there's perhaps not as good healthy access to some of the foods. And so we're trying to work on a whole process. I'm trying to raise money as well for that. I can share you all of that information. But
we are very interested in that.
They're totally interested.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leanne. I want to thank everybody who participated and who showed up to this call. Thanks for all the great questions. Someone's saying you're a definite day brighter, good day brightener, good inspirational start to our weekend. Thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone. Lots of applause and gratitude. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a great week. Safe travels back to Dominican.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.